All right. So, episode 3 had it was an emotional roller coaster. And that's because we start off with St. George digging up something. And this is from 2 weeks ago. She's digging up something, and a woman is standing there with a shotgun threatening her. Only to find out that this woman has dementia and is, I don't know if they're just partners or married to St. George. Which, okay, that was bizarre. Wait till my husband comes home. And she's like, okay, great. Can we go inside while we wait? And she's just like, okay. I mean, did she become lucid slightly? How? Why? And they have pictures everywhere, and that's labeled for her. So it's obvious that she really cares about Kate, which makes me really worried that out of the blue they introduced a character that a loved one for St. George. That worries me, especially considering what happened in this episode. So, I'm really disliking the orphanage right now, and, the fact that they're like, oh, well, we have to, kill off this innocent family just because we want to find out who hacked Alexander. And they didn't even find that out. I mean, I wanted to make an analogy to the debate that people have over whether we should or should not have dropped the atomic bomb on Japan. But at least that actually elicited the results we wanted, which was to stop the war. This didn't even do that. They've come closer to finding out who hacked, but they still have Butkus. They don't have a name. They don't have an organization. They don't have a country. They know nothing. Just that it's a lone wolf. But they do not know anything. Eastern Europe is, granted, that's better than the entire world, but it's still a lot of countries, a lot of territory. And considering how, there's this east-west dynamic, periodically rears its ugly head, again, not helpful. And I'm seriously disliking Michelle. I mean, just when you think that she's, has an ounce of empathy and actually cares for Alexander as a person, turns out that's all a bunch of bull. Because she's like, oh yeah, I got him on my side because I told him that, you don't have to tell me, you can tell anybody. I just want you to, not have this bottled up. Now, maybe if she phrased it in such a way which implied that she gave a shit, maybe that would come across different. But no, she made it sound like she's this robot who, yeah, I'm just doing this to get him to trust me, but I'm just going to, tell you everything. Now, granted, Alexander knows, and she did admit that if they don't trust Alexander, she's supposed to kill him. So So I guess in that context, Alexander doesn't fully think that she's falling for him or that she actually cares about him or anything. So maybe that's a thing. Um so yeah, he's not happy about what happened, but he's still committed to the bit. Now, I wonder how much of that is true. How much of that is Alexander just telling Michelle what she wants to hear, because Victor warned him in the very beginning about what happens if the orphanage thinks that you're going to hightail it away from them. And then, of course, there's Victor, who now it's official, he met up with Henry last episode. So this episode, he meets up with him again, and he wants Henry's nephew, Cobb, to keep an eye on him because he doesn't trust the orphanage. Okay, fine. Slight problem. Cobb seems to absolutely loathe Alexander. Whether it's simply because he thinks that Alexander had something to do with the assets dying, which, why would the orphanage keep him if he is killing off their own assets? Granted, they just, allowed an entire family to be killed, which finally broke Parker. Because I guess she would have been fine if it was just a politician, but since it was his whole family, that suddenly that became beyond the pale. But at least I honestly thought she was going to throw up. And St. George gave her a journal. It's like, write these names and, write your feelings down and then bury it. And I'm like, okay, so that's what that book was at the beginning. But we just see names. And this was from 2 weeks ago, and you wrote down Alexander Hale. Okay, that's weird. So, let's see, what else did I want to mention about this episode? Oh, yeah. Why is Alexander's father riding in a Veterans Day parade when Alexander is the veteran and he's still alive? I could understand if this was a situation where the veteran was deceased. That would make sense. But Alexander is right there. And it turns out this guy that he was talking to, whose son was a Marine, turns out that was bullshit too. Now, so Rachel is still being monitored. Marlo, for some reason, doesn't trust her, even though everybody else has been given the all clear. But for some reason, she doesn't trust Rachel, which, I guess that makes sense, that she's the source of the pills. So, but she's not a pharmacist. So, how would she, know that the pills have nanites in them? It's possible. It's not exactly impossible, but she's not in control of the pharmacy. So, but for some reason, Marlo doesn't trust Rachel. Now, we find out that Henry is the head of national intelligence. Now, for those of you who either don't live in the US or just aren't familiar with every organization in the government, which, why should you? National intelligence is actually the organization that was created after 9/11 to oversee all the intelligence gathering. CIA, FBI, whatever. So they could have one coherent narrative. So the idea is that so something like 9/11 doesn't happen again, because the theory is that no intelligence would go through the cracks. They would all go to the same place. So he's the head of national intelligence. And Victor is asking him for help to keep an eye on Alexander, which he's like, oh, he doesn't tell me anything about what goes on in the orphanage. But yet we see him looking at the hack. We see him talking about Alexander being an asset. What the hell is national intelligence doing assassinating a anti-fascist politician? What the hell is going on? And it sounds like if their theory is true, orphanage's theory is true, he's just basically selling it to the highest bidder that this is not an agenda. He just doesn't care. He just wants to make money. Which makes me wonder if he truly is Cobb's uncle, which it seems that way. If that's true, and both he and Victor do not like the orphanage, then why is he doing this? Why is he, causing all this chaos if all he wants is, I don't know, I don't know, is he trying to make the orphanage look bad? Seriously, what is the end game? Or is he just in it for money? And how much does Victor know? Cobb obviously does not know anything, because he would not be speaking to Henry the way he has been if he knew what was going on. If he knew about the hack. Well, for one thing, he wouldn't be blaming Alexander, because it's not Alexander's fault that his eyes and ears were literally hacked. So, yeah. Gonna be interesting when Cobb finds out that dear old uncle is the chaos agent. I'm sure he'll be thrilled. It is nice, even though the orphanage was like, yeah, it sucks, but, sometimes innocent people have to die for a greater good. At least they all had the decency to be bummed out. Moira, St. George was a little more calm, little more even keel, which actually pissed me off. I'm like, I do not like you. Granted, she writes shit down and literally buries it, but does that really help you? Does it? No, I don't think it would. It's a nice idea, but I don't know how well it works. So, I don't know how well that's going to help with Parker. I'm really starting to ship Parker and Alexander because, like I said, Michelle is ticking me off. Ironically, the one time she told the truth, saying that she centers herself in a cemetery, she then takes back and says that was a lie. Why? Why would she say that? I mean, She could have come up with another cover story to explain why they were going into the church catacombs so they could speak freely. What the heck? And last I checked, cemeteries are generally on church grounds. Again, another reason why you could, not. You could have kept with that about the. But I guess she wanted, she's like, oops, I shouldn't have said that. Um, I don't want anyone to know anything about me. So, yeah. Let's see what else is there about this episode. Hmm. Yeah, I really wonder how the dynamics are going to go going forward. It's nice to see that even though Michelle thinks that she has Alexander wrapped around her finger, I don't think she does. I question if she does. It's entirely possible that he just wants her to think that, he's, even though he's conflicted, he's with the orphanage, or maybe he's telling the truth. If there's anything this show has been teaching us, it's not to believe jack shit. Let's see here. I believe that is all I have for this video. So with that, I will see you guys in the next one.